Good evening, everyone. Welcome as we learn Torah Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. As always, we begin this shir with great Hakaras HaTov to TorahAnytime.com for granting us a platform to spread Torah throughout the Jewish world. Also to Kol HaLashon for its incredible global network, to Torah Communications Network, to YouTube, to our Zoomers, our subscribers, and all of you who are here live at our flagship station, Agudas Yisrael Beis Zev of Fairways Lakewood. Tonight we have two special sponsors. We have a diamond sponsor who I had the privilege of meeting for the first time today, who gave a significant gift towards the share. His name is Daniel Onuna, and he's dedicating this share tonight, a very important share, in honor of his wife's birthday today. And he wishes his wife, Lauren, gifting her the schus of Torah that's heard around the world. He wishes her that she should have, together with him, gesund, knowing that they're healthy without any scares, that she should have, together with him, sweet shalom bayis, that they should have nachas from their wonderful 8 children, they should have parnasa berevach uvechavod, and hatzlacha in ruchnius and gashmius. The shir is also sponsored from far away. It's actually in a partnership from Manchester in the UK and from Williamsburg. Achim, brothers Halpern, Yaakov Akiva, and Shalom Pinchas, and they're sponsoring the shir on the yard side of their Zaydi, Reb Avram ben Reb Shlomo Schreiber, and their holy great-grandfather, the Heilige Ksav Sefer, Avram Shmuel ben Yamin, then, of course, Harav Agoy Nechsam Sefer, Moshe, and Neshama should have a great aliyah. Also, Lili Nishmas, their nephew, on his first Yortzeit, Habacher ben Zion Yoel Halevi, ben Reb Yoel Halevi Weiss. His neshama should thrive in Gan Eden and go Lamala and be a Melitz Yosher for his family. If anybody wants to sponsor a future share, which is heard, this share is heard by well over 1,000 people who heard and viewed on the different carriers. You could text me at 718-916-3100, 718-916-3100, or email me at rmmwsi@aol.com. Baruch Shechiyanu v'kiyamanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh, to the learning of Parsha Shmos. When we learn Shmos, we're not just learning just any Parsha, although every Parsha is very important, but Shmos helps us in the fuller fulfillment of many of our mitzvahs, which is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. For example, Shabbos, in the second Luchas, the first Luchas says Shabbos is Zeicher Ma'aseh Bereishis. But in the second Luchas, it says Shabbos is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. And the great Satmar Rebbe, Zatzal, Zechus Yagan Aleinu, Reb Yoelish, said that if Shabbos was only Zeichel Ma'aseh Bereishis, then it would be for Goyim too. Because Goyim also have a world. But the fact that it's Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, that makes it uniquely Jewish. Because only we were taken out of Mitzrayim. So the learning of these parshas heighten our appreciation of Shabbos. Of course, it makes us more ready to celebrate Pesach, which is all about Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Paro says, Hava nischak malay. We have to deal wisely because Pen Yirba, they're having sextuplets. They're multiplying far, far beyond us. They're going to become more than us very shortly. And then when there becomes one of our enemies that is not pleased that we took all their money for food in the time of famine, and they'll come to try to get it back, the Jews, the Jews will act traitorous and join our enemies, and they'll have the inside track, and they'll war with us. Now this is a terrible character assassination of Klal Yisrael. And this is what it says in the parasha, Vayareyu Oisanu. They made us bad. Jews were always makir tov to their host country. That's the history of Jews throughout the ages. Jews were always patriotic to their host country. It's not true that they would have joined an enemy and went against Egypt. It was a terrible character assassination of the Jews. However, the Torah is telling us that we should not be surprised that these accusations would be hurled against the Jews. This is very important. It's very important to learn history because history repeats itself. There's certain threads in history. So let me tell you about a letter. Most of the things that we have, the primary commentary on the side is Rashi. You learn Chumash, it's Rashi. You learn Gemara, it's Rashi. You learn Navi, it's Rashi. But if you open up a Mishnayos, what do you have on the side of the Mishnah? The Rav Mibar Tanura. The Rav Mibar Tanura was a very great man. In 1887, the Rav Mibar Tanura wrote a letter to the world. Now, it's not like today that you could put something on, mass media, and the whole world knows about it right away. In those days, it didn't happen. But the Rav wrote a public letter wanting the world to know this story. We have the letter. And he wrote that in 1887, there was an incident in Yerushalayim where a Muslim boy murdered his mother. So they came immediately, they arrested him, and then there was a court case. And they asked the boy, why did he do it? So the boy's lawyers said that he was drunk. So the judge said, where does a Muslim child get wine? Muslim child get wine? So the lawyers said he got it from the Jews. Oh, the Jews sold him the wine. The Jews are responsible for a Muslim woman's death. So what was the decision of the tribunal? They levied an enormous penalty on the Jewish community, and they freed the child that murdered his mother. This is the true story that the Rav sent around to warn the Jewish people. And that is that this is a way that the Goyim can blame anything on the Jews. If you Google 9/11, one of the first things that comes up is that 9/11 was a Jewish conspiracy. And the proof that 9/11 was a Jewish conspiracy, as crazy as that is, Osama bin Laden plotted and had cells to homicide bombers to give up their lives. But why was it a Jewish conspiracy? Because so many Jews didn't go to work that day. They studied that only 19 Jews died. There were so many Jews in the towers, and only 19 died. It must be they knew about it beforehand. It must be that it was a Jewish conspiracy. Truth of the matter is that we know that B'chaste Hashem, it was the days of Slichas. And days of Slichas, people had longer davening, and because they had longer davening, they came late and they missed it. But this is not, you see, there are certain threads that run through history. You have to learn patterns. In the 14th century, untold people died from the Black Plague. It was known in those days that they blamed the Black Plague on the Jews. They said the Jews poisoned the wells. Now today, with the hindsight of history and scientific knowledge, we know that the Black Plague was caused by diseased fleas. There's even a name for it. Versnia pestis. So there's a name for it. We know that as a fact. But in those days, they made pogroms and they massacred Jews because the Jews caused the Black Plague. There are so many examples of this. There's the blood libel. Miller used to say that you don't need to be a Christian theologist to know the falsehood of Christianity. All you have to see is the massive churches studied through the European continent, still used. Like there's a huge church that sits 1,000 people called the Church of Saint Theodos. Who was Saint Theodos? He was a boy killed so that the Jews could use his blood for the matzahs. You don't have to be a Christian theologian to know that we never use Goyish blood in our matzahs. But this is a pattern in history. Now, the protocols of the elders of Zion, where it's established, it's their doctrine that the Jews have attempted to take over the world. Now we know that that's just a Russian concoction. Why is this? So you'll say, Rabbi Weiss, is there a reason why you're taking up precious time in Chumash Shmos to talk about this nonsense? Well, we see it started from Paro when he said that when there's a war, the Jews will join the enemy and drive us out of the land. That's ridiculous. Jews never side. They always side with the host country that gives them comfort, that gives them Mitzrayim till this day. we have a law, lo yisrasayiv mitzri, you're not allowed to hate mitzri, because he gave you refuge at a time of trouble, at a time of famine. So why is it important to see this thread? Because when we hear in the colleges today, in the halls of the Ivy League, places of insanity, and we hear how the Jews are causing death to poor Palestinians, and they're very convincing. The poor Palestinians are taken advantage of by the bully might of the Israeli army, except that we're not getting the full story. We're not getting the story that the Arabs are, the terrorists are putting the missile launchers in the yards of the schools and on the rooftops and basements of hospitals. You're not getting the story. Right? So we see that there's a pattern over here that follows throughout history, how things can be twisted and the Jews could always be blamed. The terrible Tach V'Tat Holocaust under the monster Chmielewski, where he convinced the Polish peasant that it was the Jews who were causing their misery. It's nothing new. So you'll say, but is there something else we could learn about this? And there is. Because when did this start? When did it start that Paro said, Hava nischak maloi, we have to be ingenious with them. We have to find a way to malign them. It started when Vayamas Yosef v'chol echa v'chol adorahu. It started when we started to assimilate with the Egyptians. When you start assimilating with the Egyptians, then Hashem says, I'm going to have to push you apart. And then the Goyim find reasons to hate us. It's a safety valve that we shouldn't lose. We shouldn't bleed and lose more and more Jewish people. Talking about this assimilation, there's a fascinating Sam Sefer. Sam Sefer Zeretzav Kodesh Bracha Schus Yogan Aleinu. It says, Vayatzmu b'ma'od ma'od. We became very, very mighty. Of course, the simple meaning is Paru vayishritzu vayirbu vayatzmu b'ma'od ma'od. It uses 6 words to tell us that the women gave birth shisha b'keres echad, to 6 tuplets, and although usually if it's multiples, they're very small, they're very tiny, they come out like 2-pounders. Sometimes some of them don't survive, but vayatzmu b'ma'od ma'od, we were very big, we were very strong. It was a great miracle. But the Sam Sefer takes another look, because we know that Torah Nidreshes b'shivim panim, the Torah is expounded 70 different ways, on 4 different levels: Pardes, Pshat, Remez, Soid, and Drush. So he says, Vayatzmu b'ma'od ma'od v'timolei ha'aretz oisan. It says ma'od means money. Like it says, we should love Hashem v'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol ma'idecha. V'chol ma'idecha, the Gemara in Bracha says, it means you should love Hashem b'chol memoincha, all your money. So vayatzmu b'ma'od ma'od, we became very, very rich through our connections with the royal family, with Yosef and the brothers. We were the only ones that didn't have to sell our land. Vayatzmu b'ma'od ma'od. We were full of ma'od ma'od, not just ma'od, not just money, but ma'od ma'od. We had a lot of gashmias, says Chassam Sofer. Oy vey. V'timalei ha'aretz haisam. And therefore that led us to fill through the land. Because once we had money, we were accepted in all high society. And it brought us near to all that is filthy in Egypt. The idolatry of Egypt. It says we stopped circumcising. That's what it says. Kishemes Yosef, Heiferu bris milah, we annulled the bris milah. Amru, it says in Shmos Rabbah, Nir k'Mitzrayim, let us be like the Egyptian. We stopped fouling ourselves. We started going to theatrios. We started to worship their idols and worship the Nile. But says the Chassam Sofer, the key was, what led to that? Vayatzmu b'ma'od ma'od, because we became very, very wrapped up in Gashmias, very wrapped up in materialism. Now, that also causes, by the way, when a person has a lot of money, then they don't need God. Pasuk says, Vayishman Yeshurun Vayivat. Yeshurun became fat, and they kicked. You see, when things are not going so well, we need God. Shema Keleinu, Hashem Elokeinu. Shalom Allah Yiseseina Elohim Me'ayin Yova Yesri. But if a person has a lot of money, he doesn't need anybody's help. I recently heard a clip from the very successful and profound Rav in the Five Towns, Rav Moshe Weinberger. I heard him decrying the fact that he heard that there was an upsharing for $40,000. Somebody made an upsharing. Upsharing is when you cut a baby's hair for the first time after 3 years, and they made an upsharing for $40,000. Now really, if it wouldn't be sad, it would be comical. Because the whole idea of the upsharing is to celebrate the first time that the baby is doing the mitzvah of Payas. And the mitzvah of Payas is that we're different than the Goyim. We don't do these extravagant things. Rabbi Weinberger didn't point this out, I'm saying it. You know what else the purpose of an upsharing is? You see, when a baby is born, the baby is in mourning because it lost the learning that it learned in its mother's womb. When the Malach strikes it by the lip, it forgets its learning. That's why by a Shalom Zocher, we eat a food of Avelis. Svardim, they eat eggs. Us Ashkenazim, we're a little bit more circumspect because they ain't Avelis b'Shabbos, but we serve arbus. Arbus, chickpeas, is also a food of mourning because it doesn't have the chickpea doesn't have a seam. And it represents an oval that doesn't have a mouth. It's in mourning. The child is in mourning, and therefore we leave to let his hair grow. A mourner doesn't cut his hair. And he first cuts his hair by the upsharing, because at 3 years old we start teaching him Torah. Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Morasha Kilas Yaakov. That's what we do with a baby when we're cutting his hair. Torah, 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 Tziva, Lano. We say the aleph base. We put honey on the aleph base. So the idea is now we could cut his hair because his mourning is over. He's beginning to recover. It's his career to recover the Torah. That's the emphasis. To make a mockery and spend $40,000. The truth of the matter is, if you want to spend money on an upsharon, there was a minig that they used to take the hair and weigh the hair. And they would give its weight in gold or silver to tzedakah. That's a minig that's brought down by an upsharon. Then he said that there was a wedding recently. These things I don't know about. There was a wedding recently where they had the chosin and kala appear from the ceiling and come down on a motorized cloud. He mentioned about people buying for their children a coat and spending $1,000 on a coat. But you have to understand this is not just insanity. It's not just like Rav Yisrael Reisman, I've heard say many times, it's not just that we're creating a culture that's not sustainable. It's going to burst. Like Rabbi Weinberger say, people have to have a house that's 2 blocks long. But you see from this Chassam Sofer such a infatuation with Gashmias is directing us in the direction of the Goyim. It doesn't stop with that, because then the women have to go to the fanciest stores. And in the fanciest stores, the styles brought in from Paris are very often not tzanua. And it brings us to great problems. People want to travel. They start traveling to places where there aren't the inhibitions that they have when they're in their homes in Lakewood and Muncie. And they go on beaches where there's no tznius. So this is warning us. Be careful with this over-infatuation of Gashmias. Be careful. Vayatzbu b'ma'od ma'od. Vayavidu Mitzrayim es b'nei Yisrael b'forach. The Egyptians worked us with crushing labor. We know that all of this was because of Paro's insecurity and terror of the overwhelming population explosion of the Jewish people. We were a family of 70 people. And after 4/5 died, we still had 600,000 people. He was terrified. And therefore he was looking for ways to stop us from having children. One of the reasons for the makkah of dam, of blood, was because Paro made a decree that women shouldn't go to the mikveh to purify themselves in order to cause them not to sleep with their husbands. So therefore the water turned into blood because they stopped women purifying their blood. So it says, "Vayavidu Mitzrayim es b'nei Yisrael b'farach." B'farach means to crush, pareiches. Excuse me. It means nifreches, to crumble. It caused us to crumble. But it's also lashon paroches, a curtain, because the Paro made a decree: you have to be up early, you have to work late. Don't go home. You'll sleep in the field. So he essentially separated the men and the women, that they shouldn't be able to have children. So the great El Yerabba, most people know the El Yerabba from his psak. The Mishnah Berurah quotes him often. The great Poskim quote the El Yerabba. It's also the great Sefer on Shas, Sheish Shitas, from the El Yerabba, Ga'inish Svarim, Sefer on Shas. The El Yerabba said a fascinating thing. I never saw this before this year. Always learn new things. Every year we learn new things. The El Yerabba said that Paro diabolically only gave avodas perech to the married people. You didn't have to do the crushing labor if you weren't married. He only gave it to married people. This was another diabolical, nefarious, sinister plot of Paro to try to convince the Jewish youth not to get married. Because if you get married, you're going to have to work like a maniac. You're going to work till you crumble. In that way, he was hoping to stem the tide of the terrible population explosion. It's a really fascinating El Yerabba. Really gives us a new look into what happened in Egypt. Paro said, you know who has to work the hardest? Married people. If you're not married, you don't have to work so hard. Try to get the people not to marry. Now, the El Yerabba doesn't say this, but I believe that Paro over here is a forerunner to Achashverosh and Haman, and he was also plotting that if they don't get married, what are they going to do with their hormones? What are they going to do with their normal male desires? They're going to commit znus with the Egyptians. And we know that Elokeinu shel Elokechem shel elu soinei zima, and taking a page out of Bilam's book with the Bnei Midian, and Achashverosh and Haman, he was trying to get the Jews to sin. The Jews didn't. But it gives us an idea of the plotting of Paro. And you know, when we hear these things, we could then plug it into other things that we have. Remember, I told you that my good friend, Reb Baruch Salnika, once showed me a Frankfurt Haggadah that said on Moror Zeh, Noyagin litzbaya el ishtay. When it says Moror Zeh, the minig is to point at your wife. Now, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. You don't want to give them the wrong idea. But it's a minig. So I once told you that there's a pshat that it says in the Medrash that the men did the women's work and the women did the men's work. So when we say Moror Zeh and we say Chaymer Leveinim and Kol Avodah B'Sada, so you point at the wife because she's the one that did that. The men didn't do the brickwork, the women did it. It says the men did the women's work and the women did the men's work. There are other pshatim, but now we hear another pshat. Because when we talk about Moror, the husband points to his wife and he says, it's only because I was married. If I wasn't married, I wouldn't have to work that way. Wouldn't have to work. El Yerabba says, you're not married, you weren't given such hard work. There was a deeper understanding into Minhagim of Klal Yisrael. Vayan Moshe, Hashem said, I want you to go to Bnei Yisrael and tell them that the God of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov appeared to me. Vayan Moshe v'yomer v'hein lo yaminu li. They won't believe me. V'lo yishmu b'kaili. They won't listen to my voice. Ki yamru, they're going to say, lo nira elecha Hashem. Now Moshe Rabbeinu, for saying this about Klal Yisrael, that they wouldn't believe him, he was punished. So Hashem gave him 3 signs. The first 2 signs was one to throw down a stick, and it became a snake, and the snake chased him. And the second one was to put his hand in his bosom, and it came out with tzaras. And the Medrash tells us that both of them were punishments for speaking Lashon Hara on Klal Yisrael, that they won't believe him. So the snake was the first one that said Lashon Hara, said Lashon Hara on Hashem, that Hashem didn't want Adam and Chava to be smart like him. So therefore it became a snake and chased Moshe because he acted like the Nachash. And we know that leprosy, mitzora, is motzi ra, is a penalty for speaking bad. So his hand turned leprous. You know, it says that Hashem said to Moshe, Im lo yaminu l'kol ha'osarishin, if they won't believe you for the voice of the first miracle, then they'll believe you with the curl of the ice, the second one. What does it mean, curl, voice? So it's interesting that the Psikta Zutrasa says that part of the miracle is that the stick said, I'm going to turn into a snake, and the hand said, I'm going to become leprous. So im lo yaminu l'kurl ha'is, if they don't believe the voice of the ice, the stick and the hand talk. That's the way the Psikta Zutrasa learns. But I also wanted to learn that it might be that Hashem said, Moshe, I want you to tell the Bnei Yisrael that it's happening to you because you spoke Lashon Hara about them. I want you to tell them that. You see, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have the luxury to be cavalier at all with Lashon Hara, because we were being punished in Egypt because of the Dibara of Yosef, because of the Lashon Hara of Yosef. And we were being inflicted by Paro. Paro is the same letters as Perah, a bad voice. We were being afflicted because of Lashon Hara. The leader has to be perfect. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu was being dealt with so harshly. Rav Pam, it's a new beautiful sefer out from Rav Pam by Rabbi Smith. Rav Pam cites the Chofetz Chaim, who says something in the name of Rav Eliashik. He says the blame that Moshe Rabbeinu was being blamed was for his word selection. He said, Ve'hein lo yaminu li. Hain means they certainly won't believe me. Hashem said, you had no right to say that. If you would have said, pen lo yaminu li, perhaps they won't believe me. Okay. Hain lo yaminu li, they certainly won't believe me. You had no right to say that. And he cites the Medrash that says that Moshe Rabbeinu was punished for this language at the end of its life. Hashem said to him, Hein korvu yamecha lamus. Behold, your time to die has come. Hein, certainly. I know you're going to pray. I should let you into so. No, certainly. Because you said with a certainty that they're not going to believe me. The lesson over here is such a practical lesson. Many times we speak about our children. And even if it's a tayeles, it's needed. But we have no right to say, they're doing this because of this. We could say perhaps. Especially since the Torah gives us a very clear positive commandment, b'tzedek tishpod am yisecha. that you should judge your friend righteously, giving people the benefit of the doubt. So to say they're doing it for this reason, yeah, that's a very big crime. Don't say Hain. You could say pen, perhaps, they don't want to, they're not coming because they don't want to help. They're not talking to this one because they're jealous. You could say perhaps, if there's something you could do about it. But to say that's the reason? And by the way, Hashem gave us a very big incentive to give people the benefit of the doubt. Because it says, when you judge people favorably, then Hashem will judge you favorably. So we have to learn from here. Even if you're talking about someone, certainly about your wife or your husband, certainly you're doing it because I'm certain. Perhaps. This is why we learn Torah. Hashem Elokei ha'ivrim nikra aleinu. You should tell Paro that Hashem, the God of the Ivrim, appeared before us. And now, we want to go out for a convention. Now, go to convention. We want to go 3 days into the Midbar, have a convention. 3-day convention. So we are here given the title of Ivrim. We're known by different things. I told you many times, we're called Bnei Yisrael because in the word Yisrael are all the Avos and Imais. The Yud is Yitzchak and Yaakov. The Reish is Rivka and Rachel. The Aleph is Avram. The Shin is Sarah. And the Lamed is Leah. So you have we're also known as Yehudim, because we're people that give thanks. Amzu Yitzarti Li, Tilasi Yisaper. This nation I created to me to relate my praise. We're people that give thanks. We're also known as Yeshurun. But here we have another name, Elokei ha'ivrim, and it's with 2 yuds. It's spelled Ayin Vez Reish Yud Yud Mem. What does this name stand for? Why are we called Ivrim? So the Medrash Rabbah says Ivrim is a composite of 2 words, Ovar Yam. We are the people who are going to cross the sea. That's when we're going to be free of the Egyptians forever and become the Jewish people, right? So we're called Ivrim because we're Ovar Yam. We'll cross the sea. And it fits in very good then that it says Hashem Elokei ha'ivrim, because that's a fusion of Hashem is Midas HaRachamim and Elokei is Midas Hadin, which is very fitting for the Yamsuf, because at the Yamsuf 9 million Egyptians died and all the Jews were saved through a miracle. So Hashem is the splitting of the sea, the great miracle, the Rachmanis, that's the Midas HaRachamim. Elokei is the Midas Hadin, that Echad Mehem Lo Noisar, of the 9 million, no one survived, except for Paro. That's how they break it up. Echad Mehem Lo, one of them not, no sir, one of them survived, Paro. So that's one shot. The Psikta Zutrasa says that it says Ivriim with 2 yuds. The extra yud stands for the 10 Commandments. There's a Rashi Yoshin in some Chumashim that say the same thing, that the extra yud is the 10 Commandments. And that's also Hashem Elokei. because the commandments were a fusion of Midas Hadin and Midas Harachamim. So Dam was a terrible Midas Hadin to the Egyptians, but it was Midas Harachamim to the Jews. It says, Mimaka Dam Heshiru B'nai Yisrael, because the only way the Egyptian could drink is if he bought it from the Jew. So they became wealthy. So it was Midas Harachamim to the Jews. He said, that's one shot in Ivriim. However, there's another pshat in Ivriim. Shamshon Raphael Hirsch speaks about it. And that is where the people from Avram Ivri. Why was Avram called Ivri? So the Medrash says, Shekala Olam be'ever echad, l'hu be'ever acher. The whole world was on one side, and he was on the other side. The whole world worshipped idolatry, and he worshipped the one God. And that's who we are. Elikei ha'ivriim. We are a people that can stand up against the masses. That's who we are. It's not an easy thing to do. The whole world is not dressing modestly. The whole world. It's hot outside. It's 100 degrees outside. The whole world sheds their clothes. And we dress modestly, even with stockings. That's standing up against the world. We have that in our DNA. The whole world speaks and doesn't care that they embarrass people. They talk at work, and they talk about people. They badmouth people. They embarrass people. We go against the whole world. We know that's another pshat in Ivrim, that we're able to stand up against that which is popular, against that which is the norm. The great Gaon, Rav Sadia Gaon, says something else. Now, I'm not sure. It's interesting. I'll read you the language of Rav Sadia Gaon, but I'm not exactly sure what it means. It can mean one of two things. He says we were called Ivriim, Shelomad Mitoiras, and then he says Ayin Vez Reish. So B'Pashtus, I think he means Shelomad Mitoiras Aver, because we know Yaakov, Yitzchak was sent to the yeshiva of Shem Ve'ever. Now Shem wasn't alive anymore, so it was the yeshiva of Aver. So we called Ivriim because we got our knowledge from the yeshiva of Aver. That's why we're called Ivriim. But I'm not sure. You see, I don't have Nekudas. It's possible it means something else. It's possible that it means Shelomad Mitoiras Ovar. That we followed the ways of the past. That we were loyal to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And that's who we are today. Who we are today is that we're loyal to our past. We still try to live in a way that Rashi would be proud of us. That Rabbi Akiva Eger would be proud of us. We live in a way that we would like to believe that if Aaron HaKohen would walk into our house, he would feel comfortable. Today, the world is out with the old and in with the new. That's antiquated. We're called Ivriim because we respect the past. That's the whole message of Hanukkah. That we're not into the halogen lead bulbs we still respect the flickering wicks of the menorah of thousands of years ago. Vayoel Moshe l'sheves es haish. Moshe desired to live with the man, with Yisro. Vayitein es Tzipora bito l'Moshe. So Yisro gave Tzipora, his daughter, to Moshe. Now, the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says there's an obvious superfluous word here. It should have said, Vayoel Moshe l'sheves es haish, vayitein lo yes Tzipora bito. Why does it repeat Vayitein Vayoel Moshe l'sheves es haish vayitein es Tzipora bito l'Moshe? It repeats Moshe again. Could have just said Vayoel Moshe l'sheves es haish vayitein lo es Tzipora bito. He gave Moshe Tzipora. Go. Why does it say again vayitein es Tzipora bito l'Moshe? So Orach Chaim HaKadosh says it repeats l'Moshe to tell us that Tzipora was Moshe's basherta. He was meant l'Moshe. She was meant for him. Not just happens to be, look, he's stuck in Midian, there's nobody around, so he took this convert of a girl from a Midian priest, Yisro. No. That's why it says, Vayiten et Tzipora bito l'Moshe, to say that she was Moshe's basherta. Now, the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says this. You see the Ruach HaKadosh of the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Because it happens to be that Rabbeinu Ephraim, who was a Rishon, says that Tzipora, the gematria of Tzipora is 375, is the same gematria as l'Moshe. It's really amazing. L'Moshe is also 375. So he says l'Moshe is coming to tell us that it was basherta, but it's there in the gematria. Tzipora is 375, and l'Moshe is 375. But what's the purpose that the Orach Chaim HaKadosh is emphasizing this? That Tzipora was Moshe Rabbeinu's basherta. So first of all, I believe it's coming to teach us that now we understand why Moshe Rabbeinu had to flee and end up away from his family in Midian. Why did this have to happen to Moshe? He had his cushy position in the palace with Bisya. He was being taken care of. He was being raised with the Tachsisei Melucha, getting ready to know how to act as a leader. And he had to run away and be separated and flee from his life because Paro wanted to kill him, because he killed the Mitzri, and he had to run for his life and go to a land that he doesn't know where there's no Jews. Why did it happen? Because otherwise he wouldn't have had Tzipora. He had to go there because Tzipora was his basherta. Otherwise, why would he be in Midian? He would have never had a passport to go to Midian. And this is a lesson. Sometimes people don't understand. Why didn't my daughter get into the seminary? I don't understand why. Why didn't she get into the seminary? You know why she didn't get into that seminary? Because the seminary that she went to, the mechaneches of that seminary made her shidduch. If she would have gone to that other seminary, this mechaneches would have never known her. Sometimes I don't understand why wasn't my son accepted in Brisk? He's so good. Why wasn't he accepted in Brisk? He ended up staying and going to Chaim Berlin. Well, he went to Chaim Berlin and he married his Chavrusa's sister in Chaim Berlin. A lot of times we don't understand why things happen. That's what Chaim HaKadosh says, L'Moshe was a shidduch. But I think there's another reason. Which is very important. A second reason. You know, the Gemara tells us that we have to take steps, even though we have a basherta, we have to take steps to earn our Basherta. It's very important to look in an age where we have such a crippling shidduch crisis. This is a very important thing to know. You'll say, what do you mean? There's a Basherta. Hashem is going to supply it to me. Yet the Gemara tells us in Brachas, Al Zois Yispal Kol Chassid Le'eis Mitzay. For this, every pious person should pray towards the time of finding. And one of the meanings of the time of finding is, Mitzvah is Matzah Isha Matzah Tov. So a person should pray to find a good mate. So you see that sometimes it's going to come to you only if you pray. Leah prayed till her eyelashes came out, that she shouldn't fall in the lot of Esav. Sometimes people have to do meritorious deeds. A very simple example. Why did Rivka get Yitzchak? Because on her own she went and gave to drink not just Eliezer but 10 camels. Each camel drinks 30 bathtubs full. Now look what Moshe Rabbeinu did in order to get Tzipporah. Was it simple? He had a cushy position in the palace. He saw an Egyptian abusing a Jew and he killed him. You know, there's repercussions for killing an Egyptian. Indeed, Paro wanted to kill him. Even when he came back, the only reason he came back is because Hashem told him, Ki meisu kol ha'anoshim ha'mavakshin es nafshecha. The only witnesses were Dasim and Aviram. They became impoverished. They're not believable. They're not credible anymore. So Moshe Rabbeinu, to save a Jew, put himself in great jeopardy. Then, when Das and Aviram were fighting, he again scolded them and gave them toichacha, which enraged them and caused them to slander him. But that's not finished. He gets to Minyat, and he sees shepherds chasing away girls, Goyish girls. Moshe Rabbeinu could say, I'm a fugitive, I can't get involved. No. Vayokam Moshe Vayoshia, Moshe got up and saved them, and afterwards took care of their sheep. So then Yisro said, Kiren Loi Vayochel Lechem, bring him. Rashi says Lechem means a spouse. Maybe he's a good catch. But you see that Moshe Rabbeinu had to do good in order to bring this. It's very important. Sometimes people have to do meritorious deeds in order to merit their spouse. Now, although he just gave a beautiful shot in Tzipporah, it's Gematria L'Moshe, I want to tell you something else about the name Tzipporah. It's my own shot. I'm very proud of it. Hashem gave it to me, obviously. The Psikta Zadrasa says that she was called Tzipporah because she was swift like a bird. She had zrizas. Now we know in this week's Parsha that when Moshe Rabbeinu delayed the Milah, a snake came to swallow him. So Tzipporah acted with great alacrity. She took a tsar, a flint, and she circumcised her son. Look how that's in the name Tzipporah. You take the name Tzipporah, Tzadik Pei Reish Hey, so it has Tzadik and Reish, that's Sar, a flint, and the remaining letters are Pei Hey. Pei Hey is 85, it's Begematria Mila. Mila is 85. It's right there in the name. Shmos Gems, it's right there in the name. So you'll say, but Rabbi Weiss, the name Tzipporah also is the letters of Prutza. A Prutza, a modest woman. Yeah, a person has Bechira in life. She could have been a Prutza as the daughter of the Kohen own, but instead Instead of that, Reb Chaim Paltiel says she was pure like a tzipora. Like it says, Kol tzipor tahira teichelu. Tzipor is the word of tahira. So that's all in the name. It's all Shmos Gems. This is only such a beginning to whet your appetites. I want to thank our sponsors, Daniel Anuna. I wish him to celebrate with his wife Lauren very, very many happy birthdays. We thank the Achim Halpern for their dedication, Lila Nishmas, Avram ben Reb Shloima, and the Ksaf Sefer, the Heilige Reb Avram Shmuel ben Yamin, ben Rav Again Reb Moshe, and their nephew, Abacha ben Zion, Yoel Halevi ben Reb Yosef Halevi Weiss, then Neshama should have an aliyah. If you want to sponsor a share, 718-916-3100. You want to join our Zoom Daf Yomi every night at 8 o'clock. Go to zoomdaf.com and put in meeting code, all in capitals, RMMW. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful Shabbos.
Rabbi, have a wonderful Shabbos.